This week in Warcraft, the AWC circuit is still going strong, and teams are bringing out new compositions and really fighting for those last minute points to try to qualify and get into the grand finals later this year. Patch 9.1 has hit the PTR. Is Chains of Domination going to be the next great thing for World of Warcraft, or will the player base continue to slip away as people are bored with the Shadowlands? Raid testing and much more on this week's episode of the Warcraft Recap. As we've seen in the past with World of Warcraft, after a few months of the new expansion, we start to see the players start to slip away, and these players are those who are out to learn the story and do the basic kind of things. And then once it turns into basically PvP, Mythic Plus grinding, and raid grinding, more of the casual players step away. Well, in the PTR this week, we now see Chains of Domination patch 9.1 enter testing, and we anticipate about 2 months of testing before it hits live servers. So for those players who are raiders, those players who are, PvPers, those min-maxers, this is your opportunity to get in there and see what patch 9.1 has to offer you and start preparing yourself for the next chapter in the Shadowlands. This Friday, April 16th, we will see the first two, in fact, raid bosses of Sanctum of Domination brought to the PTR for guilds or players to come and test. The first one will be available at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It will be available for exactly 1 hour. And the second one, right after that, the second boss will be available 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and there is no cutoff for that raid encounter. So if you're interested in checking out the new raid, Sanctum of Domination, this is a great opportunity. The first boss is the Taragru, which I believe is the nasty Bumble boss that chases you down in Torghast when you unfortunately fail and comes and hunts you down and smashes you like, Hulk smash! The second one, the Guardians of the First Ones, will be the second boss of Sanctum of Domination, and that'll be available again, starting at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the first boss, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the second boss, and that is on the PTR. With the PTR receiving 9.1, we're seeing the first glimpse of balance and tuning changes to classes. The first classes that are under the gun right now are the Druid, the Balanced Druid, specifically the Fire Mage, the Discipline, Holy, and Shadow Priest all receive changes. The Rogue, the Warlock, and we also see a variety of Coven changes, including Kyrian, Necrolord, and Venthyr. So, if you're interested in seeing any of the changes that might pertain to your class, now, given this is the first week of testing on the PTR, so some things are obviously subject to change, but if you want to start taking a look at some of the changes, such as to New Moon, or to Flame Strike, or to Spirit Shell, or maybe you're interested to see what they're doing to Affliction, Affliction Warlocks, make you irrelevant in 9.1. Or if you want to check out the new changes to your Covenants, may you be Kyrian, Necrolord, or Venthyr, you can go over and check out any of the patch notes that are coming out of 9.1 and your normal WoW news sites such as Wowhead or Icy Veins. Make sure you give a read over these. Again, if you're one of those players that play more casually and you're not one of the min-maxers, definitely take the time to understand that these things are very subject to change. There's also a variety of PvP changes to classes as well, including the Frost DK, the Arcane Fire Frost Mage, the Mistweaver Monk, the Shadow Priest, the Assassination Rogue, and all 3 specs of Warlock. So make sure, again, if you're interested in min-maxing, you want to start getting yourself prepared for 9.1 once it comes live, and what we anticipate is about 2 months, go read these, and you might want to go in and test them out. I know for my guild specifically, not me because I'm old and stuck in my ways, and, well, let's be honest, some of these newfangled kids out there get off my lawn, who really know how to min-max and play their classes and are really good with their hands and doing rotations and such. These are things that are important to you. For me, who's old school and, well, I just heal and I don't really do rotations that much because it's hard for me in my old brain. You might want to come in and check these out and give them a test because there's a lot of changes happening and a lot of changes that are going to be happening. I think 9.1 is going to be a quite significant change in the overall meta from Shadowlands, and you may want to get on it early. I know even I'm probably going to get in there and test at some point, but I honestly, I can't be bothered. Quite frankly, I'm old and I'm pretty lazy. So I'll figure it out when it comes out. And I'll be bad, like I always am. A long list of new legendaries have been put on 9.1 on the PTR. These are Covenant-specific legendaries. You can find them on Wowhead if you want an ongoing list and what they're currently tuned to do in 9.1. They've already got the Death Knight out. They've got the Druid. They have the Mage. They also have the Warrior. The other classes are still in an unknown status. We're not quite sure what those legendaries are going to look like. And again, the final look of what these legendaries may be is not determined yet. And obviously the ones that are out there are, they're going to get changed. But these Coven-specific legendaries are looking specifically at your Coven ability. For example, in the Death Knight, the Necrolord, Abomination's Frenzy. Abomination's limb duration is increased by 4 seconds, and the frequency it gains Bone Shield, Rhyme, Runic Corruption is increased by 2 seconds. Additionally, enemies pulled by Abomination limb take 10% increased damage from you for 12 seconds. And this is, again, some speculated stuff in there, but you can check out the long list of things that Wowhead has pulled from the PTR on the Wowhead website. Check out their post on new Covenant-specific legendaries in Shadowlands patch 9.1. But I don't know about you, but maybe they're going to try to bring out the Unholy DK. Little slappy hands in there. The Frost DK has seen a significant increase in rating and Mythic Pluses. Obviously, the Blood DK is starting to see an increase, but the Unholy DK, our unholy, disgusting, destructive powerhouse at the beginning, especially in the raid tier, well, kind of dropped off. So now, is this new legendary going to bring them back? A little slappy hands action in there with Army of the Dead, PI, and all that fun stuff? I don't know. But check out to see your class and their Coven legendaries that are currently being tested on the PTR. Welcome to the Anti-Melee Week. That's right, the Mythic Plus affixes for this week are not melee friendly at all. We have Spiteful, we have Volcanic, we have Fortified, and of course, we have Prideful. This combination is not friendly to our melee classes whatsoever. So Wowhead always ranks the tiers based or the dungeons based on tier and tell you which dungeons are the easiest to get through and which dungeons are the ones you want to avoid this week. Here you go. The easiest dungeons to get through, and these dungeons have pretty much been in this tier just about the entire season, regardless of affix. We have Mists of Tyrannus, Halls of Atonement, and Plaguefall. Your medium difficulty dungeons this week are the Necrotic Wake and Spires of Ascension, and your anti-everyone, please stay out, it sucks, you're going to be frustrated and probably punch babies. We have Theater of Pain, Sanguine Depths, and The Other Side. Yeah, man. I'm really bad at let's make a deal, yeah? He's an amazing voice actor, and I just... I'm sorry. I ruined it. I'm going to avoid going into any more on 9.1 due to the fact that there's a lot of storyline spoils and also there's a lot of changes to character models, specifically to NPCs, that we are going to be interacting with in 9.1 once it releases. So I don't really want to spoil things for everyone. However, if you're not one of those concerned with spoilers, just go to Wowhead or Icy Veins or any of your WoW news sites, and you'll start to see the data mining coming out of what some of our beloved heroes and villains are going to look like, and some more juicy spoilers that have been data mined out of the 9.1 files. Now, please keep in mind, all these are obviously subject to change. However, they look pretty cool. I'm not going to lie, they look pretty cool. And the only thing that I'm a little annoyed about is it looks like a particular person that has done evil things for a very long time is going to get some sort of evil, awful, horrible redemption story. Come on, Blizzard. Just seriously. Just put her out of her misery. I'm tired. Just, like, lock her in a crypt or something. Seriously. I know people like her. I know she's a beloved voice actress, but can we just, like, can we put her on the back burner for a while? Like, I really hope she doesn't get a redemption story. She just, she needs to just take a seat for a little while. Let things blow over. Let things forget about her. Then she can come back. But damn. After 2 days of heated competition in the AWC circuit, we have a shakeup in the North America teams. The first 3 teams are battling hard for that number 1 seed, and in fact, Method NA has now dropped from that number 1 seed, which we have seen them in for so long, and number 1 is currently Cloud9 with a 5-0 match record, 15-2 game record, absolutely dominant performance. Method NA has slid to second with a 5-1 match record, 15-4 overall. Golden Guardians is number 3 still, 4-1, 12-6 record overall. 4th place, OTK. 5th place, Hamsters and Hares. 6th place, Charlotte Phoenix. 7th place, Unitas. And completing our top 8, Space Station Gaming, who has struggled to get on the board. But if you want good competition, you should really tune in to the AWC. Specifically, these top 3 teams are really battling it out to see who can be in that top spot after the circuit is over. So let's take a look at how the EU is doing. On the other side of the pond, over in the EU, after day 2 of week 3 in the circuit, we have Skill Cap still at the top of their game. 6-0 match record, 18-6 overall record. So they haven't came through completely unscathed, but pretty good at 6-0, 18-6 overall. Number 2, Creed, 4-1, 13-5 overall. Reload Esports has made some jumps this week. They are currently at 3-2, 12-11 overall. Tegrity Damp has dropped a little bit. They are now out of the top 3. They are currently 3-3, 9-13 overall. Ad Hoc Gaming, number 5. Method EU struggling to do much of anything in the circuit. 2-3, 10-11 overall. Kawana Gaming, I always struggle with that name. 1-4, 9-14 overall. Blastwave Bros, 0-5. But 2-15 overall. They have gotten 2 game wins, but they're struggling to get on the board as far as a match record. But what we can see, both in NA and in EU, the top 3 teams are really pushing to divide that line between the rest of the field. EU a little bit more on the first place side. Skill Capped has absolutely dominated this tournament. On the North American side, we see a really strong battle and swapping around of places between the top 3. But over here in Europe, Skill Cap really just holding on to that first place by a decent margin right now. 2 games or two matches, 2 full matches up on Creed right now. So a lot of work that Creed and Reload Esports is going to have to do over in the European bracket in order to try to take that top spot away from Skill Capped. But let's take a look at some of the crazy compositions and interactions that we saw this week in the AWC. So the first game we're going to take a look at is game 1 over in EU, and that is Creed versus Tegrity Damp. Now, Tegrity Damp has had a few little meta changes, but in general, they've been playing on meta all season. Creed, on the other hand, has what in the hell is that? Creed has brought in a Demon Hunter. They promised they were going to bring in something crazy for this match, and sure enough, here we have the Holy Paladin as the healer. We've got the Frost. Is it Frost or Fire? That's Fire Mage. I see Combust there. We have a Fire Mage, and we have a Demon Hunter against the Druid healer, which was our main meta healer in BFA. We've got the Warlock, and we have the Shadow Priest. So very on meta there for Tegrity Damp, and a Demon Hunter. I'm excited to see how this goes. So we're going to jump through this match. We're going to see who the victor is. We're going to see how this Demon Hunter plays out a little bit. And in a very short 1-minute match, Tegrity Damp had no response for the pressure of that Demon Hunter. Holy crap, he was dashing and dodging, and wings are out and glaives are flying. They had no response to that, and the Warlock drops, and that gets the first victory of our week to Creed, and that just out of nowhere, Demon Hunter. I mean, Demon Hunters have been great because of a bug. They've been great for Mythic Pluses as far as a tank, but the DPS side of the Demon Hunter hasn't been exactly that high on the list this year for this expansion in any content whatsoever. We have seen him a little bit kind of in the pickup group version of PvP, but we haven't seen them so much in more of the competitive meta in both PvE or PvP. But holy crap, Creed brings in the Demon Hunter and absolutely wrecks in a very quick order the Warlock on the side of Tegrity Damp. And I'm curious to see how Creed continues on this entire weekend. Obviously, we know the standings already, so we know where they're going to sit. But that was something absolutely ridiculous. Usually these matches are going to dampening, sometimes plus 30, 40% dampening. So 1 minute and 11 second match is absolutely crazy. 171,000 damage from the DK, along with 37k healing. Absolutely dominant performance from Creed, and this meta shaking change from them. So let's keep going through this weekend and see what other crazy meta we may unveil. After another somewhat interesting change in the meta here coming from Blast Wave Bros. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good meta change based on what we saw from Creed, but they brought in the Frost DK to their team, and unfortunately with the Frost DK, they did drop both games with the Frost DK to a Marksman Hunter, a Balanced Druid, and a, I believe it was a Discipline Priest to Ad Hoc Gaming. The Beastmaster Hunter put up some interesting things. It was actually a Feral Druid. I apologize. It was not a Boomkin, but it was a Feral Druid. But they showed up with the Fire Mage Frost DK and the Holy Paladin. Unfortunately, it wasn't a good decision. Now, in Game 3, after dropping the first two with the Frost DK, they did swap out that Frost DK for a Windwalker Monk in order to maybe put up a win and get back into this match. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, and the Beastmaster Hunter, the Feral Druid, and the Disciplined Priest were able to prevail. Kind of a more on meta for Ad Hoc Gaming. We haven't seen too much of that Beastmaster Hunter out there too much this season, but Definitely a class that is coming out on its own, both in PvE and PvP. But we saw another meta shift from one of these teams in Europe, trying that Frost DK out, which does have some boom power in PvE and PvP. However, not enough in the professional ranks to really make that big of a difference. Really quite interesting so far in day one. Some of the meta changes we've seen, some for the positive, some for the negative, but I'm anxious to see, again, where these teams go each week in the AWC, and even not so much, but sometimes in the MDI. It's really interesting to see how these teams are bringing in new class spec combinations to try to get some sort of competitive advantage. Sometimes it works out. In the sense of Blast Wave Bros, it really didn't, and it was really depressing. I was really hoping to see some good Frost DK play and maybe even a win with another off-meta team, but we didn't quite see it, at least today. Our next big meta shakeup comes to us from the NA side, where we see OTK bringing out some really interesting changes in their meta. They've got the Windwalker Monk, they've got the Frost DK, and the Holy Paladin, which we've seen quite a bit of. Against Hamsters and Hares, Holy Paladin, we have the Fire Mage, very meta there, and then the Assassination Rogue, which is making itself known a little bit more, though it does have one of the lowest win rates in threes as far as the AWC. But this is the first major shakeup in the meta that we've seen as far as in the NA, and really for this week of the AWC, bringing in that Frost DK again, partnered with that Windwalker Monk. We don't have a mage, we don't really have too much of a range threat from the OTK team, where a lot of other teams are at least keeping a Shadow Priest or a Fire Mage in here. But let me tell you what, the damage output of the OTK and Hamsters and Hair, it's absolutely ridiculous. Having those double melee, we've got the Ring of Peace, we've got all that fun stuff. The absolute just, we're going to stick to you and we are going to melt you type mentality definitely shows in the healer mana throughout this entire fight, where the Holy Paladin of Hamsters and Hares is struggling with mana throughout the entire fight. Now, with that being said, we know OTK is relatively high. They've sat in that 4th seed most of the tournament, and they do pull out some wins here against Hamsters and Hares, which we know is in that 5th or 6th seed based on the standings that we saw a little bit earlier. But again, really interesting that teams are experimenting more and more with this Frost DK, with the Windwalker Monk. We've obviously seen now the Beastmaster Hunter. You know, at the beginning of the AWC, we were wondering when the Rogues were actually going to make it to Shadowlands. And throughout this week, we actually saw in the AWC quite a few Assassination Rogues making their presence known. Now, in a lot of these cases, the team of the Assassination Rogue was not in the higher up standings. Obviously, the folks like Cloud9, Method in A, Creed. Now, Creed did have that crazy Demon Hunter play, but in general, the top teams are still running that very strong meta, either a Holy Paladin Disc Priest, or we've always got the Fire Mage, and then that last DPS spot is kind of a flex spot. Sometimes we see a Warrior, sometimes we see a Shadow Priest. You know, in weeks past, we've seen Enhancement and Elemental Shamans, we've seen Boonkims, we've seen Feral Druids, but in general, we've got that Holy Paladin Fire Mage, which is kind of sticking throughout this entire season, and it's just the DPS slots that have swapped around. To finish off day one in the recap for the AWC, we see Method in A, a team who has dominated the entire season, but has unfortunately after this weekend fallen to number 2. We see them bring out a relatively meta approach here. We've got 2 melee DPS for them. We've got the Warrior, we've got the Enhancement Shaman, and we have that locked in stone healer for Arena in the Holy Paladin. But over with Golden Guardians, our 3rd place team in NA, we see something interesting here. We see a Holy Priest. A Holy Priest. Not exactly the class spec combo we've really grown to see in most of the Shadowlands. not only in the raid scene, but also in PvP. Also bringing out the Ret Paladin, and of course that that sneaky devil, that Beastmaster Hunter, who is starting to slide more and more into compositions. Now, we know, since we've already looked at the standings at the beginning of this recap, we know that Method NA does drop to second place. However, Golden Guardians is holding on to that third spot. So we, kind of can take a look here at day one and understand that the changes that Method is making, Method NA specifically, is making away from meta. It's still a relatively safe combination for them. They're still running that Warrior Paladin combo, and then that Flex DPS they can kind of play around with, and they use the Enhancement Shaman. And over for Golden Guardians, they're, bringing that Beastmaster and a Holy Priest, which again isn't something we've seen that much this season. But Golden Guardians do fall to Method NA in the first day of competition for this weekend, and I'm anxious to see what we see in day two, because day one this week has been an absolute crazy flip in a lot of the meta. Now, again, generally, the meta has been pretty stable throughout even this weekend in the AWC, where we're seeing the Paladin, the Mage, and then that Flex DPS spot. But we have seen some really interesting things. So, for you folks out there who might not be playing those on-meta specs and classes for your arena teams or for your PvP pugging, however you're working on your season, just keep in mind that these pro teams, though they're absolutely amazing, are starting to show you that, not all classes are just locked in stone. If you're good at playing a class, you can bring that class to the arena and really dominate, regardless if it's on meta or not. So I really like to see this. Again, not all these meta changing shifts from these teams actually panned out this weekend. But for the casual player out there, or the player just trying to grind out their gladiator or their ranks or something, just keep in mind, you don't necessarily have to play on spec. As long as you're good at what you're doing and you've got a team that can communicate and work well with you, you can definitely get your wins in the arena. And since this week is arena week for your vault and for your for the vault quest, definitely take a look at that and have fun in the arena. So let's move on to day two and see if we have any other meta shifts for this weekend. Day two was pretty lackluster as far as some of the meta shifts that we expected to potentially see after day one, but we did have a few. We did see a Holy Priest show up quite a bit. However, definitely some mana issues and concerns with the Holy Priest in the professional arena environment. However, the big battle was number 2 in the NA, Cloud9 versus Method NA. That's the number 1 versus the number 2, and as we know, Cloud9 took over the number 1 seed after this weekend, and they brought in some interesting comp changes here in their victory over Method NA. We do see a Frost Mage make its appearance here in the AWC, along with a Destruction Warlock and a Resto Druid. Obviously, Resto Druid was the premier healer for PvP in Battle for Azeroth, but as far as a healer in Shadowlands, we're seeing it less and less, especially with the dominant performance of the Kyrian version of the Holy Paladin, with all the power that it has with its Holy Shock and its melee ability and stuff like that. However, we do see Cloud9 shift a little bit away from the meta. We also saw Tegrity Damped on the EU shift a little bit away from their normal meta. We saw an Affliction Lock, a Shadow Priest, and a Holy Priest all in one match, which was a very squishy combination. However, as a team who predominantly has played on meta throughout the entire tournament, seeing this change from them really speaks volume to what these AWC teams are trying to do. In order to qualify for the next stage of competition, you do have to end in the top 4, and they only have a few more days of tournaments left. So some of these meta shifts are really trying to get those competitive advantages to try to squeak out a couple wins in order to achieve their top 4 spots and qualify for the next round of competition. One of the featured games, which is on the World of Warcraft YouTube. Again, you can check out all of the competition for the AWC and the MDI over on World of Warcraft's YouTube channel. One of the major shifts in the meta that we've seen this weekend is, of course, bringing in that Frost DK, and OTK has been the ones to own that Frost DK Windwalker Monk melee combo. And again, they're holding on to that top 4 spot with this combo this weekend. Again, we haven't seen this particular class spec in the meta running a Resto Shaman. We've seen that a little bit, but the Frost DK along with the Windwalker Monk, a very melee-driven team, we've seen that now make some splashes this weekend, and though not everyone was successful with the Frost DK, we can say that OTK was relatively successful with this combination of Windwalker Monk and Frost DK, not always using the healer of the Resto Shaman, sometimes pulling in that Holy Paladin. However, when you're running 2 melees and you know that everyone's going to be on top of each other, the power of that Spirit Link and Earth and Wall and those type of things really kind of give you somewhat of a competitive advantage, because all of the guys are close together, so you can evenize the health, you can really maximize the healing and the absorption and all of that. So well done to OTK finding somewhere for this Frost DK in the meta. But again, this kind of wraps up the week 3 of the circuit of the AWC, and we saw some interesting things. We saw some Assassination Rogues, we saw some Beastmaster Hunter. Though we didn't see it in day 2, the Demon Hunter that Creed brought out in day 1 was absolutely disgusting. I was surprised we didn't see it in day 2, but being that they brought it out and really dominated with it, I kind of can see why they wouldn't bring it out in day 2, because people are going to adjust to that and maybe be prepared for it. So they went back to more of an on-meta composition, and again did quite well. Though they're not number 1 in the EU, they are up there in the top 3. So again, performing quite well. And that Demon Hunter just came out of nowhere. No one really expected that. They did say they were going to switch up the meta, and everyone should be excited for it, and they did for day 1. But again, we've got a few more days of competition. If you want to check out really high-end arena competition or Mythic Plus competition, make sure you go over to World of Warcraft's YouTube, hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on, and get the inside look at what the current Season 1 of Shadowlands Arena Professionals are doing. It's absolutely amazing. Even the on-meta versus on-meta matches are absolutely crazy. These people are amazing at their classes and amazing at being able to just dominate in this PvP environment. But guys, that's going to do it for this week. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please do hit the like, the subscribe, turn notifications on, so each week you can get your dose of what I feel is important going on right now in World of Warcraft. So thank you very much for tuning in, and this has been another update for the Warcraft Recap.